There are some unforgettable moments you just can't forget. These are 5 gruesome accidents that left people traumatized. The 5th story comes from one teenager's spring break encounter. I was about 16 years old. It was spring break in high school, so I'd say about the first week of April. This was in North Texas, so any snow we get is a rare event, let alone in April. Some friends and I decided to investigate some wooded areas around the neighborhood. There were some woods on the other side of the highway from us, and we'd never been back there before. So it sounded fun. We stumbled onto an open-faced barn in the middle of the woods. When we approached, we thought we saw someone standing under the opening. I'm extremely nearsighted and didn't like wearing my glasses back then, so all I could see was this huge black man standing under the barn. As we approached, we noticed he wasn't moving, so we called out to him. No response. We crept closer to him. Finally, we knew something was up, and we jumped the fence and walked up to him. Prior to this, on December 24th, a man left his truck running at a local truck stop and wasn't heard of since. Police were called, but no one had a clue as to whatever happened to the truck driver. So the big black man standing before me wasn't actually standing at all. He was hanging from the rafters of the barn. And the man before wasn't actually black. His blood had poured under his skin and was rotting where he was hanging. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that creeped me out. At number 4, an EMT describes the most gruesome scene he was ever called to. I joined my volunteer fire department when I was 16 years old, shortly after I became a certified responder in my state, and eventually a nationally registered EMT. Only one call really bothered me. I was driving just outside my district when the pager went off for a facial trauma. I turned around and raced down the road. I was the first one on the scene and went up to the porch where the patient was sitting. While cutting up a tree, his chainsaw kicked back and tore through his face, tore his lips off of his face, broke his orbital bone, and narrowly missed his eye. He survived the ordeal. The worst part was that his son watched the whole thing go down. Yikes. Hope that never happens to you. In this 3rd piece of things that left people traumatized, a good Samaritan is left shaken by a brutal crash. I got off work late one night, and I was heading home at about 12:30 a.m. Speed limit was about 70. I was going 65. The roads were a little slick from the rain earlier, but not too bad. A few minutes passed, and a little truck appeared out of nowhere. I let him pass me up, because he had to be going at least 110 and was swerving all over the road. We were passing over a bridge and not more than 50 feet in front of me. He lost control and slammed into the wall, numerous times like a ping pong ball. I could see his body being thrown around in the truck, and he eventually ended up slamming into the median. I pulled over on the opposite side of the highway and called 911. It made me so mad because all these cars were gawking at this truck with a possibly dead man inside. No one pulled over to help. After a few minutes, he stumbled out, covered in blood, with his arm hanging off of his body. Then he began to scream. I've never heard anything like that. He screamed for what seemed like forever. When EMS finally showed up, the cops, they said he was massively drunk. I cried so hard when I drove the rest of the way home, I began to shake and ended up throwing up on the point of dry heaving. I didn't understand how he could have survived all of that and how close it was to being me that he hit and not the wall. Ooh. I don't know about you, but that gave me the chills. At number 2, a roller coaster flew off the rails. When my parents were dating, they went to Galaxyland, which was basically my city's prime indoor amusement park. They were standing next to the biggest roller coaster in the place, called the Mindbender, trying to decide whether or not to ride it. Keep in mind that this isn't a really remarkable roller coaster or anything. It's pretty fast and has a few loops and really sharp turns, but overall, it's a pretty standard ride. So many parents were standing there watching it, and all of a sudden there's this ear-splitting screeching sound followed by huge billows of black smoke. As they're trying to see what the actual hell is going on, my parents see the rail car filled with people fly off the tracks and crash into the wall behind it. Every single person in the front seats were killed instantly. Some of the people in the back seats were flung in every which way and died a horrible concrete-related death. My mom remembers a vivid detail, watching one particular poor sap fall within 10 feet from where she and my dad were standing. He cracked his head on the wall and oozed brains everywhere. Wow. There's just some things you can't unsee. And at number one, our most traumatizing story of the day, a man recalls the result of a deadly collision from when he was a young boy. About 10 years ago now, I went on a call with my dad. He was in the volunteer fire service at the time as a battalion chief. So we arrive on the scene to find two pastry trucks burning after a head-on collision. One driver suffered a minor injury, but the other died from the collision. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So after the fire is out, the two drivers are gone to the hospital. The crew separates the trucks. There was a van pancaked between two trucks. No one had been able to see any evidence of a third vehicle until they separated the two trucks. The shock wears off and the EMS goes to work looking for any survivors. What they found was a family of 5 charred and crushed beyond almost all recognition. I sat in the car and watched 2 parents and 3 children extracted from the crumpled wreck of a van. The image is still burned into my mind. I'm Deadhead on behalf of the Graveyard Shift, and these have been 5 gruesome scenes that left their witnesses traumatized.